to Influence Matters, the show that teaches you how to turn your story into impact and your expertise into influence. I am literary consultant and hybrid publisher Clara Rose. Each week, I cover topics related to crafting your message for the world and building influence for your business, ministry, cause, or brand. Sometimes I do have a guest on that is doing something unique or special in the world that I think you might be interested in, and I bring them on. And today is one of those days. So let me tell you briefly about my guest today. He is a strategic advisor and a visionary interpreter, which I'm interested to see what he has to say about that, what that means. And he is the host of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. So it's fun to have another podcaster on my cast. He partners with founders who are carrying a bold, often overwhelming idea and helps them turn that internal weight into clear strategies, scalable business models, and lasting advantage. Known for his grounded leadership and a gift for translating vision into structure, which we all need, Rick guides entrepreneurs through pivotal transformation with clarity, care, and conviction, ensuring they build what they are truly called to lead. Please help me welcome Rick Meekins. Are you with me? There you are. Welcome, my friend.
Hey Claire, how are you?
I'm lovely. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing fantastic, despite the heat.
Despite the heat, it's summer. There you have it.
Yeah.
So I read your just brief bio, but tell us what you really do. Tell me about the visionary interpreter thing. That caught my attention.
You know what happens? I talk to people. I work with companies, and a lot of times I work with a founder, and the founder's like, "Hey, I want to do this thing," and what I'll do is I'll take the time to really drill into that and really understand what that thing is. And a lot of times, the thing that they want to do isn't something that they can easily translate into their business. So it might say, "Hey, I want to do a." Someone recently came to me and said, "Hey, I've got a movie. I want to go on tour. I need to figure out how to do that. I need to figure out what that needs to look like." And so what I did is through understanding what they wanted to do, through understanding, certain things that were happening in the industry, I was able to put together a plan for them that allowed them to, roll out a tour. And then, yeah, from a financial perspective, it's like, how do we make money on that? And then what are other ways we can make money on that? And how can we use it to elevate the brand? So we took the small idea of going on tour and turned it into something that can help them to establish a brand that they can, they can certainly take to the next level.
See, I love that because, of course, my brain is very strategic. I'm wired that way. If you do the strength finder, my number one is strategic. So my brain is totally wired that way. But not everyone's is, right? So, people have
Mm-hmm.
these ideas. As entrepreneurs, we often have these big ideas, these bold ideas, and you're like, you know what we could do, right? But then the figuring out of the strategy stuff, that's where so many entrepreneurs get themselves stuck, right? You
Yeah.
don't know how to go from, I have this amazing idea to making it happen. So that strategic piece is so, so important for if you don't have that brain, you need someone to help you with that. And that's your role, right?
That's what I do. That's what I do. And I think one of the things that I always try to do is figure out how we create a real advantage for the company. It's one thing to get from the where we are now to some future state and do that in a strategic way, but something else entirely to say, in my opinion, to say, okay, how do we make this into an advantage that's sustainable? That's not going to be something that's easy for other people to quickly. Um, compete against. We want our
Mm.
companies to be as successful as possible as long as possible.
Right. And that scalable is so, so important. I think that's also a place that entrepreneurs often struggle with, right? Even in my
Mm,
own
yeah.
business, I've been in business for a really long time, right? Really, really long time. And even just this year, 42 years in business, the beginning of this year, somebody said I'm in a elite mastermind, and one of the ladies said, If you can't scale your business, current business model to $1 million a year, you have to change your business model. I'm like, can I scale what I'm doing to $1 million a year? No, because I'm like one human being, right? So I had to start really rethinking, how do I like what do I need to do to be scalable? I think so. Talk with us a bit about that, helping people see the whole scalable thing. I think it's almost 42 years in business, and I hadn't thought of it in that way, right? So is that common? Do you
Yeah.
get that a lot?
I mean, it is. I mean, you got the old analogy where you've got somebody that's, really good at, cooking, for example, and they say, hey, I want to open up a restaurant. And, they open up the restaurant, they find out that it's much more complicated than just cooking. They're running a business, and suddenly they're responsible, for, payroll and buying and selling and everything else that's going to go along with that. A lot of times entrepreneurs will go in with that single focus, that single track, and say, okay, this is the thing that I'm going to do. But a lot of times, the we're only able to sell, the number of hours. For example, if we're going to do it hourly, so we're only able to sell a certain number of hours, per month, per week, per year. What we have to be able to do is we have to start looking at things in terms of what can we do, what can we sell that's not going to necessarily require our time, or how can we sell more on a value scale than selling, hour to hour. So, for example, if you're able to, I was speaking to a woman the other day, and what she's done with her company is she's turned her company into a series of mastermind courses. And so each person that's going to attend the mastermind course is going to pay $25,000. So you get 10 people in a mastermind, that's $250,000. You get 4 masterminds a month. That's your $1 million right there. And so we look at ways to augment whatever it is we're doing with something that's going to be complementary. Ideally, something that's going to serve the same customer base, but increase either our per customer revenue or find additional customers. Another way, I've got a friend that has he's a spiritual worker essentially, and he typically works with people one to one. And what we showed him is that if he does group calls, and he charges people $25 and unlimited number of people on these calls, he can start to make more money, have more customers without spending more time. So his cost per hour or his cost per hour increases significantly. So there's a number of ways to do it. We just have to think differently about what we're going to offer to our clients.
And sometimes that's a hurdle, right? You know, uh,
Oh, certainly.
my business is a good example of that. I've just worked for so many years one on one with people, right? I'm working one on one, helping them to create the right book to use as a tool,
Mhm.
for their business, ministry, cause, or brand, right? It's about creating a tool and it's their knowledge. I'm helping them extract it and make a book out of it, right? So that's a very
Right.
one on one process. So when I started thinking about, all right, how do I make that into something that is scalable? And on my own, I was just like, the only thing that I could come up with, it was the group, like doing group coaching. But then I really leaned into, because I had a coach in this elite mastermind. I'm like, okay, how do I really make this scalable? So I had to really lean into her expertise in the group coaching world to to kind of flesh that out. So it's not something that I just figured out on my own, right? I really needed a guide to say, okay, here's best practices or here's some options for you, because it's like a new language I'm learning, right? The group coaching. It's a new world, right?
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
are people out there doing it very, very effectively. I'm like, okay, that's what I need. And that's why I have a mentor, right? That's why I have a business coach, right? We all need coaches. I'm always preaching that. Get a coach, get a coach. If it's not your sweet spot, right? If it's not your superpower, get a coach for pity's sakes and get some help. So I love that you take people through that process of finding out how to scale. I think that's a absolute missing piece in their world. So, what else do you help people with? These founders with?
One of the big things that one of the things that we noticed, or one of the things I noticed, I should say, is, or I guess, a common um, in my industry, I should say, as a consultant, one of the common things that we realize is that a lot of times companies have strategic plans, and a lot of times the strategic plans don't actually work out. And this could be like a software implementation. This could be a full business transformation. This could be, something, just a, new market, entering a new market, expanding your market, whatever that could be. And what we noticed was that what I decided, I should say, was that there are ways that we can help companies to have a better likelihood of success with their strategic planning. And so what I did is actually broke our strategic planning process down into three separate areas. The first one is more of a readiness process. So we understand, where the company is. So we're looking at the leadership. Is the leadership really on board, for the strategic planning? And then we have the team. If the team isn't complete, if we don't have the right members of the team, the right people in the right positions, our strategic plan is going to have a higher likelihood of failing. And the other piece to that is when we're actually developing the strategic plan, it has to be developed around the people that we have. Now, part of that plan can be to augment the team, of course. Part of that plan can be to remove people from the team, of course. But what we need to do is we need to start with where we are, and we need to grow over time. So we talk in terms of change management. In a general sense, we understand, the people that are going to be excited about change. We understand people that are going to kind of lag behind the change, but we've got to be able to say, okay, this is our people, these are our capabilities, this is our capacity. Let's see what we can do in this first stage, in this first 90-day sprint, the next 90-day sprint, et cetera, et cetera. And the last area, in my opinion, where companies could really benefit with strategic planning is having a growth leader on their team. And this is one of the roles that I take on for companies. And what I'll do is I'll actually be that person that is managing that strategic plan. So it's kind of like a project manager, but on a higher level. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the plan and how implementation is growing, and I'm setting expectations and I'm holding people accountable. But I'm also looking at what else is happening in the marketplace, because the marketplace never sits still. The marketplace is dynamic.
Mm.
It's like a river. You never look at the same position, the same river twice. Because water is flowing
Hmm.
downstream ahead of time.
Right.
So what we have to do is we always have to make sure that we're paying attention. And then sometimes we're just making micro adjustments in our strategy.
Mm.
Sometimes things change so drastically that we have to almost start over. We have to say, okay, you know what? COVID happened. We're not able to do business the
Right.
way that we were doing business any longer. We
Right.
have to adjust.
Yeah, sometimes you have to pivot, right? I
Hmm.
love the analogy of a pivot, right? You when you pivot, in basketball anyway, when you pivot, you have to plant your foot first, right? That means you have to stop, right?
Like that.
Put on the brakes, stop,
Uh-huh.
assess where you are, and then pivot, right? Before you can move forward. And I think that that's having someone to guide you in that piece, I think is like foundational, right, to success of a plan, of any plan, right? Recognizing,
Hmm.
hey, we need to adjust, right? Stopping, assessing, and then moving in a new direction. So it sounds like uh, you really are coming in from the very beginning of their strategic planning. So you're not coming in and using the plan that they already have. You're actually coming in and saying, let's rework that strategic plan so that it actually works. Or, this strategic plan is not going to work at all. Let's trash it and start from scratch. Is that a fair assessment? You're like coming
That
at the
that can
beginning.
happen. That
Mhm.
that that can happen. That's. I would love to come in at the beginning. I would love to someone say, "Hey, we're
Yeah.
we're experiencing a point in our company, and we need to figure out what's next." But yeah, some companies do come in with strategic plans, and I honestly find that um, the plans don't always work, as you alluded to. They don't always work for the
Mhm.
company. They're not always built in a way that can produce the results that the company's looking for. You
Mm.
have this idealism. It's like, hey, you guys need to X, Y, Z,
Yeah.
and this is how you do this,
Yeah.
but they don't have capacity, they don't have capabilities, they don't have the leadership to
Right.
actually drive that change. So it doesn't work. So we can take elements from that strategic plan, but we may not be able to implement it as it is.
Yeah. And this is probably true at the company level, certainly true when I take on a new client for a book. They almost always come saying, "Oh, I have my outline done." But in truth, right? Nope, it's not really done. Or what they have created is all over the place, or or whatever. So you end up going, okay, let's dissect this, take it apart, right? Because you don't really have an outline here. You don't really have your blueprint done. And I think companies, unless you've hired someone or have somebody in house who has strategic planning, right? You're just winging it. Right? You're
Yeah,
making it up as you
yeah.
go along. And you're like, oh, here's our strategic plan. Isn't it pretty? Right?
Exactly, exactly. And it's. I mean, the reality is, I mean, in a lot of cases, you're not, a company's not going to have a director of strategy. A smaller company, I should say, not going to
Right.
have a director of
Right.
strategy just sitting around. It's
Right.
and I find, the CEOs, they have their focus in one area. You've got your COOs that have
Mm.
their focus on, the everyday operations. That growth leader, that strategic growth leader is really, really critical, to be able to turn
Mhm.
that wheel in a way that's going to create the most benefit for the company.
So, what is the ideal size of company then for you? I mean, obviously, it's not like the solopreneur necessarily, or is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say I do work with a lot of solopreneurs. I do work with a number of startups. However, I mean, it's more mentorship. It's more kind of guidance. I'm not going to go and
Mm.
typically, I'm not going to go and develop a strategic plan, for a startup company, for a pre-revenue company. Most of the companies I work with are probably between 2 million and 50 million, across a
Mm.
lot of different
Okay.
industries, though, which has been an amazing thing. I mean, I've learned
Mm.
so much. I mean, like I said,
Hmm.
it's like I've never been in the movie business, but it's just like, wow, this is cool. Let's do
Now
distribution.
you are.
Exactly, exactly,
I love
exactly.
that.
But
Uh,
yeah, it's been amazing.
that's
It's been
actually
amazing. But yeah.
one of the one of the things I love about what I do is that every project is different, right? Because I'm working with people creating a book. Right. So
Mhm.
one person might be a chiropractor and I learn all of these amazing things about chiropractics, right? Or somebody, might be whatever. And then I get to one lady was a real estate investor who created the world. It's like the nation's largest women's real estate investing network. And got to write her book for her or
Wow.
ghostwrite for her. And so in the process of that, I learned how to invest in real estate, right? That's one of the
Right.
perks of being on this side of things, right? Is we get to learn all the juicy tidbits and the good stuff because we need it to do our jobs, right? And
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
that's a
yeah.
cool place to be, right? Or at least from an
Absolutely.
entrepreneur, because my entrepreneurial brain is just kind of wired that way. So you're in the same position. You get all the good, juicy stuff and they pay you, right? Like winner,
Yep,
winner.
yep, yep. Yes, yes,
That's what
yes,
I'm
yes, yes.
saying. So, Rick, where do your clients actually come from? How do you get your clients? Do you have like a onboarding process, or how would people even know to find you?
I've been working on some different products lately. Historically, it's been interesting just with all of the changes. I've had my company for about 20 years, and I would say,
Mm.
15 years ago, it was like I was doing a lot of content. I was doing a lot of writing and thought leadership
Mm.
stuff, and
Right.
people would read my content. It was cool because you could like almost see like somebody bouncing around in different articles on the site, and then all of a sudden they're filling out a form.
Mm. Right.
you know,
Right. You're
but
like, ah.
with the way things are currently, that's had to change. And what we've had to do is look
Mm.
at um, different sources. And so what I've done most recently, or what I'm working on right now, is actually retreat. So we're going to put together. I'm putting together like a 4-day retreat, and what we'll do is actually
Mm.
invite executives to come in and work through the same plan that we talked about. It's going to be heavier on the goal development and the strategy development,
Mm.
but it leads into the same type of work where I can do the growth leadership for them if they have that need, if they've got that gap in their company. I do smaller projects. I have an accelerator. The accelerator allows people to come in, half-day session, 2-day session, just depending on
Mm,
which one they're looking
okay.
at. And they can, again, they can go through the process. And then on the outside of that, on the end of that, they would get a blueprint for how to actually do the implementation. Again, I'm available to help with this. We get business, through referrals. We meet people on LinkedIn, through podcasting, of course.
Mm,
So we're
sure.
just taking it's definitely a multi-channel approach
Yeah,
to
sure.
bringing new companies in.
Sure. That's there definitely has been a shift. And I hear it from all sorts of people that I mastermind with and network with, that we've shifted to a relationship economy, right? People want to
Mhm.
know more about you before they buy from you, right? We used to be able to throw up a landing page and with some information, people are like, "Oh, great, that looks good," and purchase, and that has changed, right? They wanna know you a little bit
Yes,
more, they're not as quick to plunk down the big, chunks of money. It's just that there's a shift, and I think it's affect anyone in the consulting in our kinda industry, we've just seen that and felt that. We're very much, in a well, the relationship economy, but people want community as well, right? So they're wanting the group thing and that, which is just an interesting transition. I assume that the accelerator that you have is group, right? So you're leveraging your time. It's not a one-on-one
okay, it's actually
accelerator
set up to do
program.
both. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
set up to do both. So we can go in and do a one-on-one, or we can do like work with what would be an executive team. So we'll have
Mm,
maybe 3 or 4 people in the room, and we'll take the time to do that. But it can also, I think, we can house up to 10 people in a single accelerator.
mm. Okay. Yeah, so you're leveraging your time a little bit there. I think that's been the biggest challenge for me is figuring out how to leverage my time so that I'm not trading time for dollars, right? So that we're building something that's sustainable without our sweat equity, our constant
For
sweat
sure.
equity, right?
I, what I do is I really look at it from a value perspective, though. It's, if I take my time and work with a company or work with an individual, I know that there's a future value that I'm creating for that company or for
Mm-hmm.
that future value, and that's what I'm charging on rather than on my time, because the exchange is much more equitable that way.
Sure, that makes
You know what I'm
perfect
saying?
sense. Now, what about the very beginning? Do you have something, very I guess low ticket is the word that comes to mind, but just like entry level, exploratory place that people can start to find out about you, or like I
I mean,
have
I
a
do.
brainstorming blueprint, right? It's like a beginning way to interact with me.
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, I allow people to come in and have a conversation, and we
Mm,
might have a
okay.
few conversations. We get to know each other. If they're coming from a podcast, again,
Mm,
you know how intimate it is when you have a podcast guest and you have conversations before and
mhm,
after and
mhm,
all of that good stuff. I mean, this is how I'm, to your point, getting to know people ahead of
mm.
time. And then
Okay.
once we actually have that relationship, and I leverage LinkedIn for that as well. I try
Oh,
to actually have conversations with people. I try not to, really, pitch slap people. It's like, hey, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. I really
right, right.
prefer to actually have a conversation with people because
Mm,
I think the thing about my business, about your business, is because it is so, the relationship is so important. We have to have the right
mhm,
chemistry with the
mhm.
people that we're working with in
Yeah,
order
true.
for all of us to be successful. And so, without that conversation, if I'm just, just mass mailing people or whatever,
Right.
it's not it's not effective. It's just not effective.
Yeah. I agree. It's that relationship economy that we're in, right? Where people want to know you as a person before they engage with you and give you their money, right? They want to know that it's,
Yeah.
which is why I do like a free discovery if anyone wants to, anything out of this something small, like if, hey, I think I want you to co-write or ghost write for me, whatever. We hop on a discovery call because I need to know what your book's about. I need to make sure that we click, right? That we,
Hmm.
and sometimes I have to say, oh, this isn't a good fit for me, right? And then give them other
Right.
resources. So so you do it like a discovery call for people? So
Oh
sounds
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
mm,
I'll do a discovery call with them. I'll get an understanding of what their challenge is. I'll
mm,
put together a proposal, and the I think with the proposals that I put together, in all honesty, I mean, if they choose not to work with me, if they find that I'm not a good fit, it is something that they could
mhm.
probably take to someone else and get the work done because um, I feel like I'm very good at being able to understand what people's challenges are and how to engineer a solution for what that challenge is.
Mhm. That's great because then they at least have something, right, that they can start with. We did
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
recently with a website redesign for my husband's business. We actually paid for a a blueprint, right? And they just did all this research, and we did end up using them. But even if we hadn't, all that was so valuable in looking at what we needed, where we needed to be, and what we needed to get there. That was so valuable. That's why we used them
Mhm.
really, right? Because we could go,
Mhm.
they spent all this time and energy putting together this amazing plan, and we're like, "Okay, yeah, these are the right people." Right?
Yeah.
These are they
Yeah.
clearly know what we're trying to accomplish. They know what they're talking about. So that's a powerful way to bridge that gap, I think, from just
Yeah.
checking you out to saying, "Yep, you're the right people for this
Yeah.
job, or you're the
Yeah.
right person for
Absolutely.
this job," for sure. Okay, so we just have a couple minutes left, but tell us about your podcast because I'm curious. Tell us about your podcast.
I have to tell you, I absolutely love my podcast. My podcast was an accident. We had a different podcast about 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it was called Epiphany Off the Cuff, and we just interviewed everyone, and it was fun. I had a co-host, and we had a lot of great conversations with folks. We shut that down. I guess I don't know. After I'll just say after COVID. I don't remember exactly when, but I had the bug. I was just like, what, I really want to do another podcast, and so I spent I don't know 6 months, just trying to assemble this thing, and then all of a sudden last year I was just like, what, we're going to do it. And so the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast is designed for entrepreneurs. And what I want to do with the podcast is I want to give entrepreneurs inspiration, first and foremost. I mean, what we do as entrepreneurs is hard. It's something that a lot of people will never experience. It's something that has challenges, both emotionally and relationally, financially, et cetera, that we have to deal with. And it's lonely. I had read this book a few years ago called Hard Thing About Hard Things, and it was about a tech CEO, and in this book he just goes through challenge after challenge after challenge, that he's running into, and it was just so relatable because during COVID, I mean, our whole business changed. It changed everything for us. It changed everything for a whole lot of people, and a lot of companies just kept going. And so
Mm,
that's really what I want to give to
somehow.
companies. I want to give them
Yeah.
I want to give them inspiration to keep
Yeah.
going and do what they do best.
I
So
love
yeah,
that.
I
I love
absolutely love
that.
this one. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to listen to your podcast, but we are totally out of time. But thank you so much for being here today. I so appreciate your time. And I know this will be great for my audience. So thank you, my friend.
My
All
absolute
right,
pleasure.
guys. Here we are at the end of another episode. I just want to throw it out there really quickly. If you are ready to get your book out to the world and you want to grow your influence with your book, you can join the free Savvy Author community on Facebook, or you can go over to clararose.com or craftingyourmessage.com and check out the brand new Savvy Author Mastermind we've rolled out. It is for you if you are ready to jump in and get your book out to the world this year. I am out of time. I will see you next week, same time, same place. Take care.